I was 11 years old at the time. I was suffering from undiagnosed and untreated Lyme disease, anxiety, psychosis, and PTSD. I was a neglected child, and it was very obvious in the way I reacted to being touched and being talked to. I'd started middle school in America, and that probably was the worst decision I have made. I was cute, a little bit of acne, short, fluffy hair, a naturally slim figure, long eyelashes, and large, hazel-green puppy dog eyes. My parents were aware of this, as I had been a target for peculiar adults earlier on, so I knew to be vigilant of any older students giving me any unnatural attention. But remember, I was suffering from undiagnosed psychosis, unmedicated. My judgment was awful, and my inner want for attention from any older friendly figure overrid my fears. This was also very obvious in the way I had torn the skin off my hands, or pulled the hair off my head and made irrational, sudden decisions that usually ended up in me getting bruised or hurt. I was a flashing neon target for manipulation. In the month of October, I had some issues with my legs, and it required them to be both in casts. I could still walk, but my mum picked me up from the back of the school now, instead of me having to walk the 15 minutes journey home. It was a pretty, green, suburban neighbourhood, and the walk was nice. So I was a little disappointed and a little anxious, because I didn't like being alone, behind the school, after hours. I was delighted to know there was another kid that waited there for his mum to pick him up. Let's call him S. We had the same video game pin on our bags, so we talked. He was older, I don't remember what grade, but he was about 15, 16. He was a lot bigger, stronger, taller than I was, but I didn't mind. We'd wait the 15 minutes for our parents to arrive, say our goodbyes, and I'd hop down to my mum's car and wave and tell my mum about him. She was a little suspicious, but was happy I was talking to people normally. After a few conversations while we waited, S started getting a little touchy-feely with me, but I was delighted to have person-to-person physical contact from somebody I liked. He'd squeeze my hand, ruffle my hair, pat my shoulders, etc. But I didn't see anything wrong with it. At one stage, he gave me his tumbler, and I gave him mine. After school, we would text each other about our interests, and we waved to each other in the hallways. I was ecstatic, but eventually, he ended up sending me cute things with the tag DDLG, saying that he thought I'd like it. They were things like pacifiers, or stuffed toys with pastel pink, glittery fillers, and captions like, "Look what Daddy bought me." But I was thrilled he was thinking about me. I wasn't used to people giving trash like me such high regard. In my free time, I would explore these tags. I learned that it stood for Daddy Dominant Little Girl, a fetish for a community for pseudo-pedophiles, who get off to the idea of having relationships with children in their families, pretending to be their caretaker. More and more he eased me into the idea, and because I had a lot of childhood trauma behind me, I took comfort in it. It just kept escalating, and at one stage, he asked me if I would like that kind of relationship. I said yes. Every morning, he'd text me something along the lines of, "Good morning, princess. Can't wait to see you. I love you so much, little one. Remember to eat." At around 7, another lovely little text in the middle of the day, and a good night one at around 7 in the evening. He then began to ask gently if he could, say, pick out my outfits for me, or read me bedtime stories. And I loved it so much. I was then hospitalized in early January from a manic depression-induced suicide attempt involving a seatbelt and some seam cuts. In the emergency room, I wrote little letters at the back of my sketchbook I had brought with me, addressing him as Daddy and signing them off as Princess. My mum never read them. I wasn't allowed on electronics, so after a few days when I was discharged, I was met with a spam of texts from him wondering where I was. They were a little possessive, but eagerly I texted back. We met up in town a couple of times, got donuts together, looked through the baby section of the local pharmacy for pacifiers and baby bottles, talking about how we wish I could buy them. We'd then talk afterwards at night. He'd send me suggestive texts, expected from a romantic relationship. So at one stage, I responded. Every night, he then began to pressure me into sending him videos of me masturbating for ones of him in return. Drunk in love, I complied, and he'd send me paragraphs of what he'd like to do to me, and videos of him doing what you'd expect. Physically, it hurt, and I expressed this to him, hoping he'd stop, but he ate it up. Every night, sometimes he'd request specific things, wearing pink socks, or pose beside a teddy bear. It was freaky, but I didn't care, even if it felt gross. At one point, he bought me orthopedic pacifiers and requested me to put them up there, and send him videos of me wearing them and cooing his name. I was only really allowed to call him Daddy. He began pressuring me into more and more and more. I was then hospitalized for 3 months in an outpatient facility for my recovery, so it was only through text until I came back in around the month of May. My mum still picked me up from the back of the school, and he'd wait there for me. He put me on his lap and pushed me up against the wall, kissed me hard, but recoiled like he touched something hot when he heard the familiar sound of cars, smooth motor, and tires against a poorly paved road. He told me it was our little secret, and not to let Mommy find out. So I agreed. On Fridays, we'd go to the park. One day, I wore a baby blue baby doll dress I had, and he couldn't get enough of me twirling and running around. He then sat me down away from his friends to tell me how much he'd love to smash my face against the pavement, right there, and fuck my corpse. It escalated quickly then. I asked him why, and he instantly went back to the caring father persona, pretending he didn't know what I heard. He told me I was hearing things, and I believed him. He told me the same thing at night. The next day, we repeated our nightly routine, but I asked if I could leave early because I was tired. He then sent me paragraphs from his phone, and about how if he didn't get what he wanted, he'd have to teach me a lesson and stretch me out himself to show what happens to good girls. Finally, I broke from the love-struck daze, and I was terrified. I cried into my blankets. I grew distant, but he didn't. My mother found those texts after I left my laptop open on the couch. She reported S to the police. He stopped coming to school, and I remember hazily going to court and ending up having a restraining order against him. Sometimes he tried to reach out to me, but now my internet was officially monitored, so I blocked him hesitantly. My friends supported me, and I moved out of the country across the Atlantic Ocean 2 months later. I since burnt that dress and melted those pacifiers. I gently washed the stuffed animals he made me associate with and put them up for adoption at the local thrift shop. I couldn't go to parks anymore because of the word Daddy would make me break down crying instantly if I heard it. But it's been a while since then. He's gone now. My now boyfriend goes to school with S. S recognizes him and will approach him, asking about me. My boyfriend is terrified, but has asked S to leave him alone, and after a few close calls, S has started to avoid my boyfriend. S is still preying on girls my age. A girl who had been since abused by him reached out to me on Instagram to tell me what he's doing. S doesn't refer to me by my name anymore. He'd call me that autistic chick, and tell the girls he's in relationships with that I was so much better than them for being compliant and cuter, and it makes me sick. But I'm not in America anymore. I can't do anything about it. Maybe karma will catch up to him. Maybe he'll finally go to jail soon for stealing money and abusing little girls. But the fact he's still out there catches up to me at night sometimes, and it's frightening.